I will start the session, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yes, Prof.
Yes, sir.
Please, Nirmal sir, carry on.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, respected Registrar Madam, and our today's resource person, Prasannanshu sir, and all other my dear colleagues and the participants. A very good morning to one and all present here. A small introduction about our today's resource person, Prasannanshu sir, before handing over the session to sir. Sir has completed his LLB and also 3 master's degree in arts, namely General Linguistics, MA English, and MA Linguistics from Delhi University, BSc Honors in Sociology, and MPhil from Delhi University, and also PhD from Delhi University. In addition to this, Sir has completed his management, journalism, arts, culture, parliamentary processes, procedures, IELTS examiner training, research methodology in linguistics, Urdu script, aviation, computer application, copyright, forensic science, the list is going on. Since it will take more time, I will read the short profile of our today's resource person. So the short profile is, Sir is the professor of Nasla University, Delhi, and also the director, Center for Linguistic Justice and Endangered Linguistics in the same university. Sir is the project coordinator of study and research towards preservation and promotion of indigenous and endangered languages, and also the member of publication committee of the Linguistic Society of India from 2018 to 2020. Sir is the visiting professor, Université Paris, Nanterre, France, and also the visiting professor, Université del Piemonte, Oriental, Italy, Fellowship of Institute for Advanced Studies in Humanities, Edinburgh, UK, British Academy visiting scholar. Sir's areas interest is endangered linguistics, law and language, law and literature, law and culture, communication skill, linguistic, neurolinguistics, psycholinguistic, clinical linguistics, anthropological linguistics. And also Sir has visited University of Edinburgh, American Institute of Indian Studies, MAIT, GC, SIP University, Delhi, Skyline University College, Shara, UAE. With this small brief introduction, I am handing over the session to our resource person, Professor Dr. Prasannanshu, to deliver the talk on the interface of law and literature. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It's really a great pleasure to be back to Tamil Nadu National Law University. I remember, I think it was year 2012 when I visited. I don't know when it was established. I think it was established in 2012. And I stayed here for 10 days. If I remember, it was 10 years ago. And I helped in formulating the syllabus of this very subject on which you have given me the great opportunity of talking on. And it was such a great experience. I have been to so many places, as you have just mentioned, but TNNLS was really great because meet me. I have taught so many batches. Not even my students from Delhi visit me when they come to Delhi always. So I have very fond memories, and it's due to this pandemic that we could not meet. Otherwise, that much would have been much better. I would have preferred to come. In the meanwhile, I have shared a few things in the message box. Please have a look. So one is a list of some of my publications. Not list, rather they are the publications. And second is about my introduction, which sir was mentioning, and I have shared with you. That's on my website, and I will refer to the website, these articles a bit. And also let me share my email with you. And also, so now I'm fully introduced, I believe, and you can introduce me as and when you feel like. And I certainly would request you to please keep your cameras on, because I am a teacher and there is a difference between a YouTuber and a teacher. So YouTubers are very comfortable they know how to act, imagining there is an audience in front of them. I am not able to imagine. I usually like to interact. So if your cameras are working, kindly turn them on, not off. Okay. So I know it's too early in the morning, and this is what happens with us. We have become used to it. The students don't want to turn on the cameras now. It is our turn.
Dear participants, please turn on your video.
Yeah. If you are not in the bed, then please.
If you have
Otherwise,
otherwise
you will imagine you are in the
yes,
bed.
please. Yes, please.
Thank you. See, the topic on which I have been asked to talk is, even if you had not asked me, I think I would have talked on that only. That is the interface of law and literature. So it sounds oxymoronic, it sounds shocking, it sounds illogical, and it may sound blasphemous to some of you to put law and literature in the same sentence. Even if we put it on the same page, some of you may be shocked that what is there in common between the two. So you can express your shock if you want. And formulate it in the form of a question. Do you think that law and literature have anything to do together? Means they have anything in common? If anyone feels so, please set the tone and share with us. Yes, I think Anil Kumar is trying to say something. Are you trying to say?
Yeah, good morning, sir. It's nice to meet you in this 1 week faculty development conducted by Tamil Nadu National Law University. I teach English here at Tamil Nadu National Law University, so I was keenly waiting for your presentation today. Thank you so much for your, yes. So as far as I'm concerned, I had been here for more than 3.5 years. And I've been trying to explore the possibility of looking at law and how to make use of literature and language, particularly language, to help the students to understand the complexities involved in legal texts. Language makes everything. Without words, we cannot approach any disciplines. So words come from language. I mean, I'm not talking about English, but in any language for that matter. So as your question deals with literature and law, literature as a discipline is made out of this sense called law. Without law, literature cannot function, because we read sentences and text on the basis of certain, abstract law. So for a law student, they must understand people, because literature speaks about the future. Science speaks about truth, history speaks about past, but literature speaks about what will happen tomorrow. So the possibilities of human lives can be learned and can be engaged. So law and literature is not far away, it is very close, and it's very essential for students or law practitioners to understand the problems, because literature gives problems, concerns to engage with. So I just wanted to make it short.
It appears nothing remains to be said now about law and literature after your detailed. Yes, Professor Vikas. Yes.
I think
really
law is
appreciate.
the product. Good morning, sir. Sir, I think law is the product of the literature. Suppose I want to see the Dowry Prohibition Act. I need to go back to the literature and what was the history. So what has been written over thousands of years ago. that may be kind of some sort of rules can be I can found, and the philosophy, the base, the background, the particular philosophy behind that particular law principles, we can have it from them. So it is just a literature. I think it somewhere contribute to for the creation of law. Some
Wonderful, sir.
scholarly I'm talking about.
So you are making my job really so simple, because a few who may not be initiated, I think they will learn from all this, and I don't have to say much. Maybe I can just tell you some stories about my myself. Sorry, I have not been keeping very well. Just cold because of the cold climate. So I remember when I came to Tamil Nadu National Law University, TNNLS, almost a decade ago. So do you know that Jaya TV and I don't know which all TVs and newspapers came to cover a small event we did, and they published about me, and I just remember one word of Tamil, and that was very sweet. They wrote Muniswara Prasannanshu. So means Professor Prasannanshu, that is what I would I have highlighted in the newspapers. So they wrote Muniswara Prasannanshu came, and why they wrote, not because someone from another law university has come, but because I was talking about literature. And which literature? In my publications, you would see that I have one article on Tirukural, the communicative aspects of Tirukural, and they really liked it. If I had talked only about law, perhaps they might not have liked it so much. And this is the same, not even with the media. Media is only doing what people like. And a subset of people we have, they are known as students. They also like literature. This is a natural. Did I lose the connection?
Yes, Professor. Do a short while,
Oh,
Professor.
I'm sorry.
Right, please, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So in our classes also, this is just one aspect. If you just teach them law, law and law, or the right pronunciation law, then what will happen? Perhaps students will lose interest in the studies altogether. It's a very tall claim and cannot be proved very easily until and unless someone of you, there are some research scholars I have heard, take up a research project on this. This is one aspect. Second is, literature is very important because for a well-rounded personality, you don't need only technical education. Law is technical education, and literature gives you I started as a student of uh, uh, zoology, science, and I have been a student of law also, and I have studied several other things sir was mentioning. I don't remember everything. I don't keep the weight on my head. So I have had exposure to a couple of fields, but what my personal experience has been and what the literature says is that for a well-rounded personality, this word well-rounded personality, some of you must have heard. It's a cliche. Everyone uses this word. It's almost like, fashionable thing. But actually what it means is, I will tell you, you must have seen that 18-year-olds come to you, and very soon, within 6 months, 3 months, some of them start having problems basically with themselves, not with others. Sometimes they misbehave in the class. Sometimes they have problems with their roommates. Sometimes they want to go back. There are three things which I usually tell. One is three Ds actually: drugs, depression, and the third one I don't even want to pronounce, but death. Let me elaborate. And the sequence is not same. What happens when all of a sudden you are, whether it is IIT, whether it is NLU, whether it is AIMS, in all these institutions, you are exposed very suddenly and very intensively to technical things. And technical things actually mean, or how they are interpreted, although they should not be interpreted this way, that they are disconnected from the people, from the society, from the individual. Three things. And the three things are different and still they are the same. All right. So that is almost a natural outcome, that people, the students feel then the whole context is very important. If you are a teacher of literature, then obviously you know this. If you are not, then please be a bit more tolerant towards the teachers who are teaching literature. And you are, I am not implying that you are not tolerant towards them. They must be your friends. But this is one of the important aspects, that it takes care of the well-rounded personality, the person and the society. It talks about both of these things. And it is a very welcome thing that the people who decided the curricula of law universities, they envisaged that there should be social sciences as well as humanities. In the name of humanities, basically we have only literature. In social sciences, you have economics, you have the economics teacher, Dr. Professor Nagar is there, I think. Is she there or she has the next session? Yes. And sociology, political science, usually this combination is there. Sometimes history. So all these things have a role. Social sciences mainly talk about the society, and humanities talk about the individual, the human being. And literature is one of the best examples of humanities. It is all subsuming, all covering field of humanities. From humanities or from literature, you can say that these divisions arose with time. And let us only focus upon law. In good old days, there were no lawyers. Why there were no lawyers? Uh, I think I have to qualify what I just said. Let me start by saying we didn't have law schools. And lawyers were there, but they were self-educated, self-proclaimed, self-proclaimed and self-appointed lawyers. I will give you an example. It's an example between law and literature. The example of Cicero. 2,500 years ago, it was a very happening time, whether it was Europe or in India. In India, some of you must be knowing that around 2,500 years ago, Gautam Buddha was there, Mahavir was there. A thought revolution was taking place in this place. And in ancient Greece also, a lot of things were happening. Literature was being written, and we have the description, perhaps the first description of a lawyer in the Western tradition, and uh, that is of Cicero, right? So he was someone. Is there anyone who has heard about Cicero? Some English teachers must have heard about him. Others also. So this gentleman, by today's standards, would not have been allowed to practice anywhere because he did not attend any law school. but he was one of the most powerful, most famous of lawyers. And lawyers have generally been very powerful and very influential in all societies, in all times. That's another interesting thing. Now, do you think everyone who does their LLB becomes famous, influential, powerful? I don't think so. Many of them, if you have seen, if you watch Hindi movies, there was this Jolly LLB. This movie was there, and there are many other movies depicting lawyers. So very often that is the fate of lawyers. Like they just struggle to make their ends meet. Do you think they will be able to make a difference? No. Now, why I'm mentioning this? Basically, see who becomes a famous lawyer, who becomes influential. We have Gandhi, we have Nehru. There is a whole series of lawyers, even in our freedom struggle. Dr. Ambedkar, Patel, you name them. You check the backgrounds. Most of them were lawyers. They shaped the fate of modern India. And what is it? Was Gandhiji was a lawyer, you all know. But do you think that as a lawyer, he was able to make a big difference? He was able to make a difference, but not such a big difference that he would have become Gandhi. Gandhi. He would have just remained an advocate who was socially conscious. Let me start. I will pick up the story of Cicero from another point. Let me talk about Gandhiji first now. See, he studied in a wonderful law school, the best of NLUs you can imagine. He studied in London. That used to be the center of the universe at that time because we were colonially subjugated by Britain, and their capital, of course, was center of the universe. He studied there. He came back. He studied law, became a barrister, and he was admitted to the bar. The very next day, he came to India. And what should have been the outcome? Best of legal educations he had in the world at that time. Do you think that he was successful? He simply failed. Very pathetically, he failed in the practice of law. We will try to analyze why he failed in the practice of law. He appeared, which he has described in his autobiography, he has called himself a coward a couple of times in the autobiography. And he has also described his first case, also legal education. If we look at that type of education, we will laugh at it. It was without any humanities, basically. There was no literature included in it. Nothing like now we have these things. So when he came back to India, he took up a case of Mami Bai, one client named Mami Bai. She has also become immortal or famous with Gandhiji. And he charged a fee of 35 rupees. And he presented her case. As he stood up in the courtroom, if you must be knowing that he was not able to speak anything. He felt the courtroom reeling around him. It is a description which is very similar to fainting. So we can interpret, he has not written, that he fainted in the courtroom. And he realized and he thought that everyone was laughing at him. And after that, he decided not to practice in India ever. You might have heard of Bhishma Pitama from Mahabharata, Maharana Pratap. And this is another vow which we have not heard of. In the Mahabharata, many of you must have heard about Bhishma Pitama. who took a vow of never marrying for the sake of his father. Maharana Pratap took a vow that until and unless he wins back his city, his kingdom, he would, there were a series of vows. He would not sleep on a bed, he would not, etc., etc., eat certain types of food. And this type of vow Gandhiji also took. The vow was that he would not practice in India, but he has mentioned it so much in the so casually that we have not noticed. And he actually did not practice in India after that. And he has belittled this vow by saying, try to, because of his modesty. He said that I made a virtue out of a necessity because no one would have trusted me. Now let us rewind a bit. He was in the best of law schools, and the outcome was of that legal education that he vowed not to practice in India. Why was it so? Because of his communication skills, his exposure to human nature, and his exposure. He was not well read at that time, and he was advised that he should be well read. By being well read meant not to read only the acts, the constitution, etc., the debates, but by being well read, we all understand. I think this is an intuitive interpretation. Reading literature, widely reading different types of books, especially literature. So that he was lacking. I diagnosed the problem as that. After that, he, like Maharana Pratap. Maharana Pratap also, there is a saying called "Bundi ka kila todna." If you understand Hindi, you will understand what it means. That he took an alibi to save his life. Gandhiji also took such an alibi twice at least in his life. One was this. The second was about being a vegan. Uh, he stopped taking milk. So then he started taking the milk on medical advice of a goat milk instead of cow milk. So likewise, what he did, he went to South Africa. He didn't practice in India because of this determination, vow, or realization, the way you like to interpret. In South Africa, he was a bit uh, socially conscious, and that was not all. He became an editor, a journalist, something very much in the field of literature. I would not separate journalistic writings and being an editor from being in the field of literature. And that brought him some success, some prominence in that country. And from there, he came back to India after 20 years, after spending 20 years at the age of 40. This age of 40 is very significant. And in Islam, this has been uh, recognized as a very significant age of a person. And it was for Gandhiji and for this country. He came back. And here, what was he doing? He was not lawyering, but he was basically communicating with people. So that is, I stopped the story there. But I think you have got some idea of what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that just by technical knowledge, you don't really become great, usually speaking. I don't have any example that I know of. If you have, that just by knowing the acts very well, just by knowing all the machines very well, you can become a great engineer. Like we have the wonderful Metro Man. You can take his example. He is not just a person who is good with machines. Of course, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam is also there, another example. These are people we don't know only because they work, of course, with machines, but also with human beings. This can be a field of research. We can explore these things further. So these are my hypotheses, which I am presenting in front of. Let us go back to Europe. 2,500 years ago, Gautam Buddha was here, Mahavir was here, a thought revolution was taking place, and there also many great things were happening. Like you were writing tragedies there, the Theban tragedies, and Cicero was there. Cicero was defending, in a very famous case, his own teacher. Now, according to our modern understanding, even the teacher would not have been appointed in TNNLS or anywhere else because he was not a PhD, he was not holding any net, but he was a famous poet. So there is a defense speech called Proarchia. That is wonderful. By the way, when Bar Council of India was formulating its syllabus for literature, law and language, law and literature, I was lucky enough to have formulated it for them. So all of you, when you see the syllabus, you would see there are three parts in the syllabus. One is law and literature, which I am focusing upon today. Second is law and communication. And the third is law and language. So these are interrelated things, but different. It is not significant they are different or they are same, but why I have divided them into three is so that they can be handled easily. In the syllabus, these three things have been divided and then they have been remixed. I will tell you the philosophy about that. Right. The 1/3 is about language. In traditional law universities, law colleges, law departments, we now have something to do, a subject called English. But it's a misnomer because English does not mean anything. English can mean three things. One is the people, the English. Second is their language. Third is literature. Fourth is very often communication in the modern context. So how it is interpreted in the 3-year programs is like teaching you writing essays, letters, not letters, essays, paragraphs, précis, translation from your local language to English, English to the language of the state, and some words. And these words typically include maxims and then what? Maybe some uncommon English words. That's it. That's extremely lopsided, mostly worthless, and without any understanding of the needs of the students. So I have included all this, by the way, under the topic law and language. And this we cover very fast. This portion, we put it in the form of a quiz. There is nothing to lecture on this. Can you lecture on these things? And we don't have essay writing, etc. per se. That we ask students to write in the form of answers. But you can this part in law and language. We have several other things. Like we have how to write or how to use English language in a way that ambiguity is not there. How to remove gender bias. That is very important. If we like law books, most of the laws are written in gender biased language. The first disclaimer you all read is he includes she. But it has a powerful impact on our minds, on the minds of our students. they see, for example, whenever a judge is mentioned, he would be used. So what is the impression? What is the stereotyping? That only a male can be a judge or in any other profession, but I'm just talking about even an advocate. But the reality is practically half or sometimes more than half of our students are uh, girls, and around the same number is boys. That is what we see in NLUs. But what we are teaching them, we are stereotyping. So first of all, we have to be very, very acutely conscious of this, never to use gender biased language, because we are transmitting these attitudes, subliminal messages and attitudes to hundreds of students, which will spread to millions of people. Whatever we do is extremely powerful. That is why the role of a teacher is very important in a society. So this is one aspect I pay great attention to in law and language, that how to use gender unbiased language. Then we also talk about a lot of other things like casteist language, like ageism, casteism, regionalism, many other isms like these, communalism, how to avoid them from your language, because there is a direct two-way feedback system or a vicious circle, in other words, of language and thoughts. What you think, you produce in language, and what you hear and accept, you start thinking on those patterns. I remember that I was giving the example of the first woman president of India. At least in the north, there was a very big debate in Hindi newspapers for a long time that what we are going to call her, Rashtrapati or what. Now, let me, for people who don't know Hindi, Pati has two meanings in Hindi. Pati means husband as well as master. So, and they are, sorry, I told you I have some. These two meanings are separate now, but in olden days, it meant the same thing. Pati actually meant master only. And the husband was called Pati because the husband was considered to be the master of the woman he married. So nowadays, it has become opaque in Hindi at least. Pati means husband, and Pati also means, as a homonym, the master. And when it is used in context like president, it is Rashtrapati, something like master of the nation, not husband of the nation. But many people were confused. And this debate raged on for a very long time. Ultimately, it was decided, it is so obvious that she would be called Rashtrapati. What else? Something who was caretaker, who was looking after the nation, that was a sense. So why this debate was there? If you go into the psychology of it, then you would realize what I was just saying. There are things like how to use punctuation appropriately. We take some case studies in which big losses were incurred because of the advocate's mistake of not punctuating something properly. There's not only punctuation, how to write the dates properly. There should be one format. And we also include things like writing a letter, because you need to write letters. I hardly encroach upon the field of my colleagues who are teaching law. Otherwise, in traditional courses, you have subjects like pleading and drafting. some elements can be taken from there also. But I have so many things, and I realize that why should I interfere when one senior, but you can include, these are the possibilities. This is very briefly a review of the field of law and language, which is also in the model syllabus of Bar Council of India. And as I mentioned, I include letter writing because I see that when the students come to us, they usually have certain notions about letter writing. So the format and types they talk about, I think all of you must find it very familiar. There are types of letters. I go back to the basics. I tell them, forget about the types. There isn't basic change in the shape or format. Look at the basic elements. And types become types when you use them for different purposes. But if you start teaching them about there are 7 types of letters, 10 types of letters, 20 types of letters, it becomes unmanageable. So this is the approach we take. Second part is law and communication. Again, his exposure to communication was very limited. That is why he could not communicate. There are authors like there are several, Gibbons is there, who say that law is a profession of letters or law is language. This is mostly true because I will take a break at this point. I will invite all of you to comment upon this. In NLU Delhi, we have a class of 50 minutes. So my meter is adjusted to that. It has been 50 minutes of speaking. Now it's a break for me. And you please speak.
Dear participants, so please give your response and comments. Where Professor is simply concluded with.
So this is Anil Kumar again. Shall I just?
Yes. Yeah.
So
You are most welcome.
yes. So just wanted to know about this language teaching is a challenge. We get some 60 students, and within this 60 to 70 hours, we need to complete that semester. Within that semester, we had to complete more than 4 units, and we are in that pressure. So
Can I interrupt you, sir? Can I interrupt? Because if you ask the whole question, the answer might already be there. Let me answer half of it, then you complete the rest of the question. See, teaching itself is a challenge. Why else do you think the government is paying us so much? It's exorbitant amount of fee, the salaries they are paying us. If you look at only, see, I have to speak only for 50 minutes in a day, and they are paying me so much. I sometimes wonder and I ask myself why. The answer is this: because teaching is a challenge, and it's a challenge not only in one dimension, many dimensions. So that is first part. Second, you said that we have to complete so many things. Yes, we have to complete, but with time, my focus is not on things. My focus is on students. I don't fight with students or with the syllabus. I let the things flow. Generally, we are able to complete most of the things. And NLU, most of the people are from NLUs, I believe, or from other systems also.
We
Mr.
have
Amrit,
yes, we have other institution also, Professor.
okay,
Yes,
but mostly NLU, right?
yes, Professor.
Okay. So in NLU, generally, the system is very understanding. There is a lot of flexibility. You can call it academic freedom. If you don't complete every single part, it's okay. So now you complete the question, then I know there
Yeah.
would be more things I can
So
say.
ultimately, we need to make them, to have this language competence. So where will we get that space for them to concentrate on the language aspects?
See, first of all, sir, my way of looking is slightly different. I don't have to make anyone anything like language competent or this or that. I tell them these are the importance of this. If you are convinced, pick them up. I can't teach you anything. I don't know how to teach anyone. If you want, I will share my experiences, including uh, like case studies. So this is one of the attitudinal differences. I'm not saying that you are wrong or I am right. I'm just describing what I'm doing. So many students become very interested. Sometimes they even plan a different course. Usually I teach a fourth course also. That is what we typically know as and what people expect from us, that people should be able to speak. But I have written in the syllabus also that I need a break. Join you in a minute. Okay. Was mentioning that how I have planned is the three programs I have already mentioned. The fourth one is optional. If the students want, And even the universities practically not involved in it. I just deliver the fourth course also. That is language proficiency or basics grammar of English, etc. So there are indeed a lot of things, but we should share challenge with the students. It should not be our individual challenge. One of the most important things is motivating them or making them understand what is important. They are generally very brilliant people. And some of the best students or most brilliant students in the country opt for law nowadays. So once they are motivated, our task becomes very simple. The challenge is transferred to them. This is what I usually try to do. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. You're fine. Answered. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Right. Anyone else, please? My second appeal to all my colleagues is please turn on the cameras because see, this is what you see in the classes. Isn't it very frustrating when you see all the cameras off and you know what is happening there? People are doing everything else other than listening to you. Some are sleeping, some are eating, some are, well, you can take a break. Like I just took a break. Sometimes, even in the class, if I feel hungry, I say I want to eat something. So it's fine. But if uniformly every camera is off, then anyway. I was talking about, yeah, nice. Ms. Mukherjee is there with us now. Some people are feeling moved by my appeal as a teacher. You are remembering your own time in the class. But generally in my class, after the initial few days, people keep the cameras on, most of them. I don't threaten them. And some are not there because we have to realize that they have a lot of problems. There are many issues, so we never have to force them. All right. So any other question? I would like that, I get bored listening to myself, especially this cacophonous sound with due to my pet. But in good days, I am not so musical, but still, it is worse now.
Dear participants,
So,
any input, any clarification, any comments?
see, all of us are teachers. It should not be a lecture that I am teaching you. I am not teaching. I don't even teach my students. How can I teach you? Let us interact. Ask me something. If you want, I can deliver a lecture, of course. Sometimes I am forced, then I deliver lectures. Is there anything which you found thought-provoking? Anything that comes to your mind? Anything you want to counter? You think that what I said is not really something better is possible? I should also take away something from this session. I should also learn new things. Any time you feel like, just raise your hand or your voice, whatever you like first. I tell my students to raise their hand first, but in your case, you can raise your voice also first. So we were in ancient Greece. The story is never ending. That is a very, very wonderful thing. The defense speech called proarchia. because Cicero was a master advocate, I would say. He was a master of his craft, and that is what our students should be. That is what we should be like. And he did not take much time in defending his teacher. And what type of teacher? I told you that he was not net qualified. And what type of advocate? He was not, he did not clear any LLB exams because there were no law schools. And still, we are talking about them today. And I am not the only strange person talking about them. There are a lot of people across the world who talk about them. They are so important after 2500 years. After 2500 years, how many people remain important? Very few who are really people of substance. So, what was the substance there? LLB is not important to be an advocate. The most important thing is that you understand the principles of justice. And the principles of justice or equity, I think they are not the what do we use the word for? Means sole right of or copyright of law. I think that comes actually from the consciousness of the society of right and wrong. That comes from, in other words, from culture. This is another of my passions, working on law and culture. And when these cultural norms are formalized, they become laws. What else is law? There is nothing like right or wrong in absolute terms, and law is about right or wrong only. Ultimately, these are formalized things, and law is not just one thing. This is what we can teach through literature. I have so many things in my mind. 2 hours is really. I just held a FDP of 1 week. I was the only speaker there. So, but I am thankful you gave me 2 hours. See, there are so many things we can actually teach through literature about law. Positive law is basically what we are teaching in law schools of all descriptions, whether they are departments or traditional 3 year, 5 year, 20 year, whatever it is. So there are other systems of law also, and they are very, very important, very important. One of them is like natural justice, divine law. They are very powerful. And all of these three positive laws, the concept of divine justice, natural law, etc., they all derive from the consciousness of the society. How to tap into the consciousness of society, that is important. How do we, and is there any way? We don't have any actual taps that we can get this sap or juice out of what is this consciousness, what is this culture. And it's so complicated. It's complicated in two ways. One, it is very, very diffuse. You can hardly see it. It is like air. And like air, it is important for your breathing, for your survival. Second difficulty is it is different from person to person, not only between Tamil Nadu and Delhi, not only between India and Europe, not only between Asia and Africa. The culture is different from person to person. That is the problem. And I can give a proof of it. Or tangibly, it is different from family to family or small community to another small community. Within Tamil Nadu, you can't have the same culture. It is a political, hypothetical, fantastic, and romantic view that it is same. And that is actually the theory of our country, the political theory of this country, that we are having linguistic states. Linguistic states, language is not the most important thing there. The most important thing is culture, because language is a marker of culture. That is why we have these linguistic states. Within the linguistic states, we have the concepts of right and wrong. And overall, politically, it is very perfect to say it is same all over the country. But I am saying not within a state, not even within, and you don't even have one language in a state. There are 16, 1700 languages in this country. In Tamil Nadu, you don't have just Tamil. That is the dominant language, that's all. You have hundreds of languages, right? In South India, we don't have four languages. There must be 2, 3, 400 languages there. Whether it is Kodagu, Kui, Tulu, so many of them are there. So these are the major ones. There are smaller ones also. And with them, cultural associations are there. And now from culture, we arrive at the concept of right and wrong. And from this right and wrong, you come to positive laws, number one. Positive laws actually come with the authority of the state. And many of our laws were enacted by the British under the authority, colonial authority. And this colonial authority went away, but the laws take time to change. Even now, we are changing those laws to align them with our cultural perspectives. I will give you some examples like this laws about homosexuality, laws about suicide, laws about adultery. I shared the papers with you, and one I was published in Germany 2 days ago. I have not shared it yet in this. I will put it there. You can check it by tomorrow. So the concept, for example, of suicide is criminalizing taking suicide concept. This was not our cultural concept. I have discussed it in details in a paper. Likewise, adultery. So what is this concept? Again, the concept was that man was the master of the wife. That is why this was there. Now it is changed. So how these changes are taking place? We are aligning with the norms of the society, and this keeps changing. The laws are not that they move in one direction. The positive laws I am talking about. In the courtrooms, decisions are taken, and in the Supreme Court, of course, I am talking about Supreme Court. Why? Because that is laying down law. Those precedents become law. So within 6 months, you see there are decisions which are diametrically opposite about these concepts, these very fundamental cultural concepts. The reason that depends. So there is a discussion in one of the papers on this. I won't go into the depths of it. My purpose of bringing you to this point is to show the deep relationship between society, its consciousness of culture, and the laws. And this we miss in most of the law schools or most of the law courses. This is the role we have in law and literature. Now, if time permits, I would like to share one of the poems also with you, which is my favorite. Its title is Law. We will try to analyze that. So, how to get of the society or the culture in a very simple and easy way by literature. See, there are two ways, difficult ways and easy ways. One is if you are getting dehydrated, one of the ways is just drink a glass of water. Maybe put some salt and lemon in it and sugar. Another way is pierce a vein and inject liters of this liquid. Right? Many a time it is not an emergency, it is not really required. It is just a countryside practice in this country because the doctors or the quacks can make some quick money. Likewise, for finding about the consciousness of the society, its feelings, one of the easiest, best ways is literature. You don't need to peers and injure the veins for that. It's a pleasurable thing. If you drink this solution, which I just told you, sugar, salt, water, it's such a nice drink. It's so tasty. And the other way is really shocking way. So literature is that thing which very easily gives us a hold of the concept of law, the concept of justice, equity, right and wrong, prevalent in a society. The laws are always about a society. There is nothing like absolute law. Sadly, not even divine laws are absolute because they depend upon, because divinity is also not absolute for human beings. For one set of people, one God is there with one within centuries of that religion. Their lives are important. What they did, that is important. That becomes law or that becomes the norm. Nothing is absolute. It keeps changing. If we let me wind up in this attempt the story of Cicero, why it was important. There was a very contemporary case of a poet, that is Archias. That was his Greco-Roman name, but he was a Syrian by birth. You remember ISIS, that one of the S is about Syria. So he was from that region and he moved to Rome, and there was a citizenship suit because he was also involved with very influential people, politically influential people of the time. We are talking of 2,500 years ago. It sounds like yesterday, all these things. And they wanted to expel him or harass him. His student, in the sense that Archias was his tutor, because Cicero was from an influential rich family and his father had employed Mr. Archias for teaching him. And what he taught him? Literature. That's it. He didn't teach him any law, and specifically poetry, because he was a poet. So in the courtroom, Cicero defended him within 3 or 4 paragraphs, very simply, and rest of his defense speech is about defense of literature. Very interesting. We can have a look at the mechanism of that defense speech, that courtroom proceedings. His real brother was the judge. He was presiding judge. So in these days, it is not possible. Bar Council of India's rules don't allow you such a practice. But in those days, it was. Literature gives us an insight into procedural laws. It gives an insight into jurisprudence. It gives an insight into something beyond only the limited myopic view of positive laws. Say you can make positive laws. If you have the stick, you can make any law. You can make a law like the biblical law you had for the that you cannot make bricks, you cannot use straw for making bricks. It was law, fine. But can it be sustainable for any set of people? That is important. And in our democracies, it is really of significance that laws should be accepted by people. What will be accepted by people? Making a law is one thing, acceptance is another thing. Things which are parts of the culture or the basic understanding of right or wrong will be sustainable. Other laws cannot stand the test of time. And anyway, with time, culture changes. So laws have to keep evolving. This is one of the important things that we have in our constitution. Why our constitution is so successful? This is our role as literature, teachers of literature, to tell. It is so successful. Why am I calling our constitution to be successful? See, we have people who talk about every national symbol. There are people who talk against it, and we have certain amount of tolerance also for that. I was talking about Gandhi, but There is not everyone who appreciates him. You know this very well. We have name any concept, anything associated with our country. There would be people who talk against it, and they do it in public domain. But have you heard of any demand of removing the constitution? I have not really heard much of it. Although some voices they are there, but they are not, even they are not very serious. Why is it so? The reason is that we have a flexible, adaptable constitution. We have the possibility of amendments. We have had so many, but in our neighboring countries, they had to write the whole constitution again. I remember some of my colleagues used to go to a couple of countries for helping them write. Every 5 years, they're writing the constitution. So we are not doing this. The reason is this basic understanding. I must congratulate we, the people of India, who have made the constitution in reflective of the feelings of this country, that we don't have any need yet for overthrowing this constitution. We all respect it, generally speaking. So this type of feeling can come with an understanding. And one of the best ways, as I was saying, of understanding the society is by knowing the literature, by knowing the people, and not only knowing, by telling our students that you have to know. You should be well that. You should develop a consciousness. You should not just have a blank, empty pride that I am from this profession, everything else is inferior. I remember when I was doing my BSc in Delhi University. So one of my teachers, I won't take his name, he told on the very first or second or third day of my college, see, you are a student of, in the class, he said, not personally, you are students of science. You should understand your superiority. Keep away from these people of humanities and arts. He specifically said, and sometimes it is not said so obviously, but it is imparted. This I see in all courses, everywhere. In law also, I think somewhere this feeling is there. We are different. This feeling of different is to be broken by the student, teachers of literature, and other teachers also. If other teachers are not aware of this, then what will happen? Slowly, they will impart such a feeling, and it is very harmful for the development of the student and success of the student as a lawyer. I again take a pause. I will try to complete that story, which we have not been able to. I think we have mostly completed it, but still, Cicero's story. So before that, I invite and I hope our traditional enthusiastic participant, Mr. Anil Kumar, will ask something, and others will also ask. Mr. Professor Vikas. Yeah.
Good morning. My question is, you are talking about social consciousness and social acceptance. So I just wanted to give an example, and just I want to hear your thoughts on the same. I'm from Maharashtra,
Sorry, I
and
lost
here
your
we are
voice.
having the bullock cart race. Sir, I'm from Maharashtra.
Sir, can you
and here
please
we are.
विकास जी, बनसोड़े जी, आप जरा एक बार फिर से बोलेंगे? I missed you.
Sir, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on particular social problem issue in Maharashtra. So here there is a bullock cart race which has been lost.
Yeah, losing. Are you able to hear me? Or
No, Professor. I think Professor Vikas sir has some issues. He's lost his connection.
who? Vikas ji is losing connection, or am I losing the connection?
No, Professor Vikas is losing connection. Vikas sir?
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So now what? Yes,
I-
now you could, sir. Now you could, please, sir.
I heard about the bullock race. Yes. After that.
Yeah. So in Maharashtra, there is a bullock cart race and ban. But recently, Honorable Supreme Court has
Professor,
allowed it by imposing certain conditions. Now,
Vikas sir,
shall I continue, sir?
Vikas sir,
Yes,
while
can,
speaking,
can you
please turn
please
off your
type
video,
it?
sir. Please
Yeah,
turn off your
try.
video.
Please turn off your video and start. Yes, sir. Now,
Speak, sir. Please, sir.
Please, sir.
Okay. No, yes, sir. I am talking about the social acceptance and social consciousness. So this bullock cart race,
Yeah.
now it has been allowed by the Honorable Supreme Court with certain conditions, and people are very happy. Now my question is, sir, what do you think in this particular case, whether the PETA volunteers' view should be given more weightage, or the people's views regarding their traditional movement? The question of acceptance and consciousness. So what do you think? Who is on the correct path?
Yeah. Let me say what I think. You can turn on your camera now. It's good to see some people. See, what I think is very clear, and it may not be very politically correct, but still, see, no Supreme Court or no PETA or no one else can dictate anything. Ultimately, it is what the people accept. I can make any law. The most obvious example in this context is Jallikuttu, right? In Tamil Nadu.
Yes, sir.
So it had to be reversed. Are you talking about the same example or something else you were talking about in Maharashtra?
It is same kind of sort, sir, but it is traditionally different. Yeah.
So in Jallikuttu, you know that people's will ultimately wins. So people's will, and this, according to me, in my very humble, limited, myopic vision, nothing is right or wrong. I am not saying PETA is wrong or PETA is right. I am not saying Supreme Court is right or wrong. I am not saying the people's will is right or wrong, but I am just talking about the mechanism. The mechanism is ultimately, and political science people know it very well. This connection between politics and law. What is that? This connection only. Ultimately, politics is a means of transferring people's will into law. Right? This is one of the answers I have said, but we can talk a lot about it. And I would really appreciate if you have more questions on this, or you have more comments on this, what I just said and what Vikasji just said. So, are you more or less convinced that I have said what I could have said? Obviously, this is not an answer, but
Yes, sir. But still, there is then again you just made one point in while discussing.
yeah.
You said that some people are not having the knowledge of law as such, but they are very well aware of these principles of equity and while delivering the judgment.
Yes.
So here in our society, we are having some kind of quasi-judicial mechanism, functionaries, which are working on that particular behalf, such as CAP panchayats, or here also in Maharashtra, we are having Dat panchayats, that is the caste congregation which is there, held every year. So now the legal status, I know, that is a very different perspective. But as far as the, how could you mean? So the literature, whenever we are having that, I have read in the ancient literature, there were so many ways to find out whether he is speaking truth. They will simply give the hot, iron rod in the hands, or they will make him walk on that particular, very rigorous things. Now, but there we could not find any legal basis in the Asian literatures also. for these particular things.
Mhm.
So from where you are seeing that these people were having that particular equity and all these things, just a general. Because I'm not finding anywhere this base, which is the natural principles of natural justice for making that particular decisions and all.
Sir, the concept of equity has not changed. I very humbly submit. The only difference is in the Evidence Act or the evidence procedure. In those days, according to the technology or according to the understanding, according to the development of the science, that was considered an evidence that if you put burning iron in someone's hand and it is not burnt, it is truth. Nowadays also, we are doing according to our technology. It is nothing absolute, nothing even scientific. It is only a belief system. Even now, you send people to the gallows, you hang them, and later on it is discovered, well, it was not the right judgment, right? So it is all on the concept of equity has been there constantly. Even now it is there. Even in Patikaram, you see what happened. Some of you must be knowing, people who are from Tamil Nadu. Is my pronunciation right? Patikaram?
Yes, Professor. Silappadigaram, you are correct, Professor.
So the most ancient epic of Tamil language, if you read that, you would find that his husband is to the gallows, he was killed on wrong evidence. And do you think that the concept of justice was not there? It was very much there, which the later developments in the epic tell you. And but the limitation of evidence was there. What was considered as an evidence, how foolproof it is, how much time you spend in, what forensic science techniques you use. I will like to talk about Lombardo's law, which is basic of forensic science. It says that potentially every, I'm transliterating it a bit, every crime can be detected, but the limitation of methods or its application prevents it. So in all cases, I think justice can be done, but limitations are of what you accept as evidence, how you collect that evidence, how you examine it, what are your principles of finding out the truth. That's it.
Thank you, sir. But there is one last query, sir.
So why
If-
last, sir? I object
Yeah.
to it. It shouldn't be last, and it should
No,
not.
but just it is not with this
It-
particular
so
chapter.
that-
This is not related to the topic. But as you mentioned while giving the Cicero's example, that he was arguing before his brother, right? And this is not the
Yeah.
practice here in India. Bar Council, Bar Council will rules will not allow. So just a humble question, sir. Suppose Honorable Justice of High Court is there and his son is practicing in the same High Court. And while addressing, while filing the petition, it is there to the Honorable Chief Justice of this particular High Court and all the companion judges. So don't you think in the companion judges, the father is also here of that particular advocate who is practicing in the same court?
No, I don't think it is allowed. It is not possible, I think, that you can present a case in a court where your father is the judge.
No,
If
just
you look at the
this is the
BCI
question
rules,
actually.
it is, yeah.
The student
No, it
asked
is not
me
possible.
because I was teaching one day the drafting pleading and in the writ draft. This was the wordings which are there, and then basically because I don't know even now I cannot name that particular example, but could this happen in future or this kind of sort? The question asked to me by the students. I just wanted to clarify them.
No, it cannot happen. Not in the present jurisprudence of this country. I am saying present jurisprudence. Jurisprudences keep changing. The philosophy of law changes, but the present philosophy is there, and And I think that literature certainly has a hand even in the evolution of the thinking of Bar Council of India. And there are direct evidences. If you look at the life of Gandhiji, there are several things they have taken from there also. Like Gandhiji, his autobiography is there in the BCI syllabus. Have a look at it, please. So Gandhiji has mentioned at least in 3 or 4 cases of South Africa, how he practiced, how he was practicing truth. So like the concept is there that you are a officer of the court, you don't have to be swayed by the client's fees paid by the client, etc. Such things are reflected in BCI rules also. There are a couple of sets of rules of BCI we should all read when we are dealing with students of law, whether we are teachers of law or we are teaching social sciences or humanities. So in the present jurisprudence, I don't see any scope of such a thing happening. But if the jurisprudence changes, suppose some type of totalitarian regime comes, things may change. Anyone else, sir or madam? I have not heard any madam saying anything. This is the book which I published on law and literature. This is my LexisNexis a couple of years ago. Anyway, this is not an advertisement. I am not getting any royalties. Uh, okay. All pirated books are there on the net of this. Pirated copies are there. But I will try to just summarize some of the things that we are doing and the poem law if you give me the time. We have hardly 20-25 minutes. Should I take up one poem or should I talk? What would you like? This is a 20 or 30 line poem. And believe me, one day I will give you the history of this poem. I wrote this poem many years ago. It was published. So one day the students were not in the mood of studying and I was not in the mood of leaving them also. So I was very new and I was afraid the vice chancellor will catch me if I leave the class early, although it is not the case. So I said, all right, since you are not in a mood to study, let me share a poem with you. Is it okay? And they said, yes, sir, yes, sir. They thought it will while away the time. So I read the poem. It was very short. And I was surprised when the discussion continued the next day also. Then the next day, then the next day, 1 week. On 30 lines, we discussed for 1 week. Then ultimately, I introduced it as a part of the syllabus. So let me read it to you. And if you see something, share with me. This is the first chapter in this book now. The title of the poem is Law. I saw a calf, soft and white, newborn, vulnerable, standing unaccustomed on its 4 legs. I stretched my hand and it moved its lovely, shiny black nose closer. Then I saw the big cow in the shadows, cudding, seemingly unconcerned, 2 strong horns, solid grey, pronged on her head, pointing the sky. I chuckled. The calf's whiskers tickled my palm, and gently I walked away, aware of a big eye focused on me. This is the poem. Now, the title is Law, but there is no mention of the word law in this poem. I think this you can find in the first link I have shared with you in the in published matter articles. I think I have given you it the title. Within that, material for students. So this poem law is there. So if something comes to your mind, please share. Otherwise, what would be the relation of this poem with law? The title is law, that's all. And what do you think the students discuss for a week? What could be there in it? Anyone? I know I read it very fast and with my sore throat, perhaps you might not have been able to get the whole of it. Just give me a moment. Sir, can you please, the technical team, can you please open the first link and share within
Yes.
material for the students the poem law?
1 minute, sir. Right.
Okay, please. I will give you another example in the meanwhile of how the concepts of law evolve from literature. All of you must have read Merchant of Venice. So they how do you interpret number one, you know this play, a movie. Second, you have looked at it from a legal perspective, or you have just looked at it as a story. Shakespeare is very powerful in shaping the thinking of the Western thinking, not only in English. All right, now we have this poem. Yes, great, wonderful.
Yes, Prof.
So everyone can see this, I believe. Let me read it for you again. This is the punishment I give to my students. If they don't respond, I keep reading things to them. And ultimately, they learn that, well, it won't work remaining quiet with this guy. He will bore us to death otherwise. So, yeah. I will try to come back to Shakespeare. Before that, can we move it also? Yeah, I can move it. Good. I will go to the, who is moving it? I am moving it, or if someone else is moving it?
No, I'm Amirdaling is moving, Prof.
That's good. Okay, okay, thank you. So let us go to the beginning first, then please bring it to the bottom. See, this is the poem, simple one, Law. I saw a calf, soft and white, newborn, vulnerable, standing unaccustomed on its four legs. And my question is, where is law in this poem? I stretched my hand and it moved its lovely shiny black nose closer. Then I saw the big cow in the shadows, cutting, seemingly unconcerned, two strong horns, solid grey, turned on her head, pointing the skies, the symbols of law, ready for summary justice. I chuckled. The calf's whiskers tickled my palm, and gently I walked away, aware of a big eye focused on me. So, would someone like to share their thoughts? There is law here.
Sir, I think the calf is the victim, we could say, or the thing you wanted. The cow is the rightful owner, and the horns which are pointed towards the sky. It is actually law which is protecting not only the calf but the cow also, because she is the rightful owner and she is the one who could have that particular. She has the responsibility also, but also the rightful owner also in that particular. manner. So I think the harms, it is the law who are safeguarding both, the cow also and the small babies.
Vikas sir, please wait. I think resource person is finding some network glitches. Please, sir.
Yeah, am I audible again?
Yes, Professor. Now you are.
Yeah. Can you please reduce the
Vikas,
size
you
of
could.
so that whole of the podium is visible in a single frame? Yes, it is now. Thank you. See, this is one thing, and there are so many things. There is a concept of summary justice. We enact it in the class also. What is summary justice? We do small kits at times. Summary justice is simply a justice, form of justice, where proper procedural law is not followed. You don't allow advocates, you don't listen to the other person, audi alteram partem is not there. Am I audible, sir, to everyone?
Yes, Professor, you are.
Okay. So that is summary justice. And what is the significance of summary justice here? For that, I will just give you very quick hints. One is that two strong horns, solid gray, pronged on her head. Every single word is discussed. It has been discussed so many times now. Like solid gray horns, they have a meaning. They're pronged on her head, pointing the skies. Pointing the skies, it is something like, connecting with the divine. And so this talks about divine justice in some ways. And when we are talking about divine justice, then it is a divine justice is always summary justice. Now it may sound shocking because summary justice is associated with terrorists, with outlaws, but I am trying to connect it with divine justice. Why? The form of divine justice is it is absolute. You don't have a chance to be heard then, and it is instantaneous. These are the characteristics of summary justice. But that is the ultimate form of justice. Why? Because it is divine, and divine is something. Divinity is associated with omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotence. So God is associated with, or God can see everything. It is able to decide immediately, firmly, without any doubt, without any wavering. That is why the justice is final, and it is in the right quantum. There is no political pressure, there is no procedural lacunae, nothing is there. That is why the poet has called divine justice as to be summary justice. This is one of the meanings, and second is there are several readings of this. One is that it is story of an animal and of summary justice. They will simply poke their horn into your belly and you would be gone. Justice is done if you provoke them, or if they just get provoked by something which you don't know about what it is. So that is the meaning. Then there are a lot of other things, soft and white. These are symbols. What is poetry about? Poetry uses symbols. Why poetry is used? These things we discuss. So we are discussing both literature as well as law and different aspects of law. And the realization of God is there in this at some point, which is represented by this line, I chuckled. When we chuckle. So such things can be used for talking about law in a broader perspective, connecting law with the concepts that we hold. Maybe religious concepts. Religion is also part of culture. This is there. I was talking about Shakespeare in the courtroom scene of Merchant of Venice. There, usually, what is taught in the schools is that Shylock is a villain. Shylock did something wrong. It is not that he was someone. What was his wrong? His basic wrong was that he went to the court with the purpose of revenge. But then we can look at many other things, like the contract. Antonio and Shylock had a contract. Whether this contract was valid or not, that is to be considered. In those times it was. But now in the contract law, the first thing is that it is an offer, acceptance of offer, right? And this acceptance should be based upon some consideration and lawful consideration. These are the basic elements. In those days, lawful consideration was missing, I think, in Shakespeare's times. That is why an agreement for a pound of flesh was possible. Now, let us do reverse engineering. Why do we think that this concept has come? One of the reasons must have been, and I said that Shakespeare has been and is a very powerful influence on Western thought, must have come from Shakespeare and other such literatures also. Somewhere this linking must have been there, that consideration must be lawful. And such a matter would not have arisen at all. Second is that we have to look at human rights, the perspective of human rights. In ordinary understanding, justice was done in a very efficient and perfect way in the courtroom. But what means were employed? Fraudulent means. Like Portia, an advocate, was not qualified. In those days, women were not allowed to be advocates. And even if they were allowed, I am not saying it was right or wrong. It was wrong, of course, they were not allowed. But she used fraud to pretend to be someone else. This was a fraud. And what else she did? She converted a civil matter into a criminal matter mid-trial. Is it possible in today's jurisprudence, in today's understanding or procedure? It is not possible. That is how this case was manipulated. Then there was open, unabashed, and naked racism that was going on in the courtroom. Like Shylock was not called by his name. He was called a Jew repeatedly. Oh, Jew. He was a minority member. I remember once we were staging this play, and we just rehearsed. My students came and they said that, sir, can we improvise it a bit? Can we use some innovation? I said, yes, certainly you should use it. And instead of Jew, they used the word for Muslim. These stagings was sitting next to me and he said, what is happening, sir? I said, well, I didn't approve of it. But the students, and luckily, the student who was involved in that scene was a Muslim. Thankfully, it was not a controversy. It shouldn't have been in any way, but it was distasteful, I know. So it sounded very shocking. But the students, in their enthusiasm, they had replaced this word. The only thing is that Jew should be using someone's religion as their name in place of their name is offensive. But it became shocking, more shocking in Indian context because you used something very close to home. And something you could relate with. So we were more shocked. So, but in those days, it must have been really like an abuse. It is an abuse. If I remember I had one American student. He asked me, "Sir, is it okay to call someone an Indian?" I said, "Yes, it is perfectly right. The only problem may be of your intention and the context. If you replace the proper name with, like, if I call you an American instead of your name, then it will be an abuse. Oh, American, come here. Should I call you like this? No." Then he understood this. This was happening there in this courtroom. I think we can remove this poem now. We don't have the time to talk much about it now any further. Yeah. So there were fraudulent means, there were procedural lacunae. We have to look at it. Human rights violation, because Shylock was forced to convert into Christianity and his property was annexed. His life was threatened for something which the court had allowed. So there are a lot of contradictions, a lot of improper things that were going on in that courtroom. We have to look like an advocate, and we have to look at the link how modern understanding, modern procedural law, contracts, and different branches of law are influenced, or how they evolve from literature, what linkages they have. In addition, we there was some musical interlude. uh, I have told you that we have poetry in literature. There are other poems also. The Slave Auction is there by a famous black American woman writer of a century ago. She has written about slavery and how social justice and law are related. In our country also, in all societies, in all times, social justice cannot be denied to be a part of law. Our constitution recognizes it in the preamble: justice, social, political, economic. And there is another poem, Strength of Justice. Then we have biographical writings, Law and Lawyers by M.K. Gandhi, Judgment on a Man of Law, Solije Sorabji. We also include views of Tagore on education. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's struggle for education. Dr. Ambedkar didn't leave an autobiography, so it is based on biographical accounts. I have given this name. There is a story to this also. Another time to tell you. Jawaharlal Nehru and Arnold T. Toynbee, a historian, wrote an obituary. Antigone by Sophocles, Merchant of Venice, which I have talked briefly about, Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Pygmalion and Tagore, these are the only two topics which are not written by lawyers and specifically which are not about law. These are the only two purely literary elements. Others, everything is connected with law in some way. Then The Silver Box by John Galsworthy, Trial by Judy by Gilbert and Arthur Sullivan, Background by Saki. It talks about human rights, international law. Background by Saki. This is our reading. Outside of law schools, you don't discuss it in this way. It's just a story. A Malefactor by Anton Chekhov and God Sees the Truth, another Russian writer, Tolstoy. And Imperial Message by Franz Kafka. I have just two parables introduced to the thinking, work, and style of Kafka to the students. And it also has some very, very important interpretations: Before the Law and An Imperial Message. Then by Falius Nariman, we have It's Right of Every Man to Make Fair Comment. It is about contempt of court. And I have also mentioned it in one of the articles which I have shared with you. Legality of Book Banning by A.M. Bhattacharya. These are both journalistic articles. They are about by lawyers, and they are about freedom of speech. And finally, 3 essays are there of Judicature by Francis Bacon, what a judge should be like. Why I teach, it's by a professor of law, associate professor of law, would Shylock have cut? This is literary criticism. This is the structure of what I teach, and I hope you, it's too much to say that you enjoy it, too much to ask, but I hope you were able to tolerate this monologue, sometimes interspersed with a dialogue also. And I am there, my email is there, phone is there, you can always give your feedback or continue the discussion, and we hopefully remain friends and good colleagues. I have not offended someone to the point that you stop talking to me or you don't initiate talking to me. Thank you.
Professor, there was a chat, Professor. Would you like to respond, Professor? It was stopped by Dr. Kumar, is Faculty of History, Professor.
Oh,
He's an
sorry,
assistant professor.
I was
Yes.
not looking at the chat, so I will have a look at it now.
May I read it, Professor?
It will be very kind of you.
Yes,
Please.
Professor. The relations between law and literature is a new one, or we can trace it from the ancient time.
All right, so let me answer it. See,
Please, Professor.
it is not new, number one. Number two, it has been from the ancient time. And number three, which you have not asked, it is natural, inseparable, and inherent relationship. So the moment you talked about law, I think we are talking about literature. And I have given some examples like Cicero's defense speech. So what he was doing law. He was defending a client, but we read it in literature also. MA English in many universities teaches Cicero, that defense speech. And like Gandhiji I talked about, he was a journalist and editor. Many lawyers have been. In the courtroom, what we do, we create literature. Sometimes we quote literature. Many judges like Justice Kardju, Justice Krishna Iyer is one of the best examples. What they did was they used literature a lot in their judgments, and what they did also became literature in many cases. Lord Denning, Cardozo, Justice Krishna Iyer. I hope everyone has heard the name of Justice Krishna Iyer. So, all right. That is what I could have answered in brief. What is the other question? Can you
Thank you,
please help me?
Professor.
Is there any other question?
Please, Vikas, sir, please.
Yeah,
Sir,
please,
as
please.
you mentioned about Lord Denning, just I wanted to know, because I'm from Maharashtra, there is a famous case which was there on the great freedom fighter Gopal Ganesh Agarkar. So it is written everywhere in Maharashtra that Lord Denning says, I may not be agree with you, means he said to Gopal Ganesh Agarkar, that I may not be agree with you, but I will fight until the last breath of my life to protect your right to say so. So are you speaking about the same Lord Denning? To mention him the same one?
It appears so because, and who said? Lord Denning said this or Agarkar ji said this?
Yeah, Lord Denning said to
Yeah. So that
Gopal
was
Ganesh
the,
Agarkar, because the case was there.
yeah, I think it was the same, perhaps must be the same one. I am not aware if there were multiple Dennings. Of course, he must have had kids and parents. They must also have been Denning. But this is characteristic of Lord Denning. Like he was called people's judge. So what he said, I may agree with you or not agree, but I will respect your right of speech. So this is very characteristic of Lord Denning. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this. So I am taking away something. I learned something good. Any other question? Anything else? I know there is another speaker after me, so I completed 2 minutes before time. I stopped 2 minutes before time so that if you have questions, I can answer, and I have signed. I am signing off. Okay. If
Participants,
there is
any
nothing else.
questions?
Thank you, Professor. Yes, Nirmal sir, you can
Welcome,
proceed
sir.
with our Anil sir.
Yes, sir. If no more questions, then I request our Dr. Anil Kumar, Assistant Professor of English, Tamil Nadu National University, to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Nirmal Singh Hira and other members of the FDP organizing committee for giving me an opportunity to deliver a vote of thanks. I deem it an honor and privilege to extend vote of thanks to today's principal speaker, Professor Dr. Prasannanshu, professor in the Delhi Law School. Dr. Prasannanshu had shared with us his remarkable ideas, views, and opinions on the topic interface between law and literature by connecting it with social and cultural discourses and its various dimensions. And he has also referred to, a Roman legal master, Cicero, and from there he came to Shakespeare, then to Gandhi, then to Ambedkar, and he has also referred to Krishnaya. So he has also shared with us his classroom teaching experience in relation to English language teaching in law school. And being an English teacher here in Tamil Nadu Law University, it really helped and inspired a lot, Professor, for understanding the complexities involved in teaching language in a law school. And I learned a lot from your talk today, sir. And with this, I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. V.S. Elizabeth. Without her motivation and encouragement, this would not have been possible. So thank you so much for your support, Madam, Professor Dr. V.S. Elizabeth. At this juncture, I would also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our Registrar, K. Leela. Along with that, I would like to point out the game they have played, IT sessions, a wonderful, support they have given us for the smooth functioning of this session without creating any technical delay. Thank you so much, the members of the IT department. And last but not least, I extend my heartfelt gratitude and word of thanks to all the participants who are here with us today for making this session a success. Thank you once again to all the participants, and I also wish my gratitude to all the members of the FDP committee, Professor Amurthalingam, Dr. Thomas Felix, and Dr. Nirmal Singh Hira for all your encouragements and support. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Professor.
so much, Anil, sir. Thank you, Prasannanshu,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
sir.
Thank you, sir. I request all the participants to again join at 1:50 p.m. for the second session. Thank you all. Felix, sir.
Dear participants, the feedback link is shared in the chat box, so please fill for today's session. Thank you.
Felix, sir.
Nirmal sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Who is the host, sir?
I think host is Dr. Thomas Felix.
Okay.
Felix, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So,
Please.
Felix, please stop the recording and end the session, sir. Felix, sir.